we've already started recording, Stefano.
Yes.
But I think we're kind of dealing with an ad hoc any other business right now, which is how do we deal with future Zoom invites? Do we use a password, and how do we advertise it, and so on, since it looks like that did slow people down from getting in. So I don't know if you just started the recording. Do you want to summarize what you think is the outcome, Stefano?
Sure. So it sounds like because we're forced to either use Zoom's password or waiting room feature, I think I didn't hear any dissents about using the password over a waiting room. We would like to post the password on the calendar invite. And then I'm also happy to post it anywhere else if folks find that it would be convenient to have it like in the file section of the groups.io site.
Yeah, I had joined using the latest invite that had the password in the URL. So I could just click on that and I'd have to enter it at the pop-up. Because the first one that I went in, I got the little pop-up and went around looking for the password. And then I found that I had gone to the wrong invite. And then I found the URL. So yeah, just post in the URL someplace that has the the password in the URL is fine. All right. Let's flip back now that we've got a couple more people joined. Welcome to the October 1st TAC meeting. Our culture is that we try to be open and accommodating. This meeting is open to the public. Every member is welcome. Every project meeting or criteria is welcome. We try to make this be a good experience for everybody that joins, regardless of whether you're a member of the consortium or not. This meeting is covered by the Linux Foundation's antitrust policy. In scanning down the list of those present, I believe I recognize all names as having been here at least once before. So hopefully everybody is already familiar with that. This is our agenda for today. The only modification from the original draft was the request from Outreach you saw on the list to add point number 4. So I've done that. Any other agenda changes before we get into it? All right. So let's go down our roll call and see how close we are to quorum right now. I'm not sure we have quorum, but let's see. So we know that Giuseppe won't be here, sent regrets. Zongmin, I do not see anybody from Ange Group yet. ARM, I don't see ARM here yet.
We do have Hans from ARM.
So I'm sending in for Grant and Hannes. As you've got 2 of Grant.
Excellent. So I'm going to count. So Michael is acting as the voting alternative. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And Jinsong or Shankaran? I don't see anybody from Facebook yet. What about Google? Anybody from Google yet? No. Huawei? Howard? No. Simon Johnson, I see. I'm here, and Mike Purcell is here. So I count 4, and we need 1 more to get quorum. And so if
how many votes are we expecting? Is it just the minutes?
Yep, just the minutes. So we'll just reorder the minutes discussion until we have a 5th. Let's see. So Stefano or anybody else, if you can help remind me or help me notice if we have a 5th, and then whenever we finish a previous item, we'll just insert the minutes discussion after we get the 5th person. So
Will do.
All right, so I'm going to skip this slide and we will return to it once we have a 5th. So let's do our quick action item review here. So just going down the list here, our usual number 1. What's that? No change. Okay.
No change.
Stefano, 2, 3, and 4. Anything to report?
For 2, I'll ping David this week since courses have started, and hopefully he's all settled in Seattle. I am working with Axel on the NARCS mailing list. I'm actually hoping to have at least a position to go in this week. We have an alias working for Axel, but long term we just need to get a simple like mailman-like list set up. For number 4, if Zongmi doesn't join, I think I did send an email to Zongmin, and we're sort of going back and forth about what might be in the TCB. I think it might be a little unclear how they differentiate between what's in the TCB and what libraries they're using in general. And that might just be my poor communication. So I'll see if I can get that settled next week.
So on number 2, we have both David and you on it. Should we add Zongmin on this, or do you want us to just track this with you?
That's fine. You can just track it with me.
Okay, great. All right, either Ava or Mike, the terminology proposal, I assume this is still in the same stage as before, or?
Nothing from me. Ava, I don't think we've done anything, have we?
Yeah, nothing from me. We haven't talked. We should.
We should. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. Mike, how's your next week look?
Let's do this in the chat.
You got it.
Okay, so are you okay with us leaving this on the action item review each time, or would you prefer us
yeah,
to
I
move
think
it
so.
to GitHub?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll keep it here and not a GitHub issue. Got it. Okay.
One question for the room, is anyone waiting on what we're doing with that for anything else? Okay.
Sounds like no, hence my question as to whether you prefer us tracking it with a GitHub issue versus this. But unless you want it moved, then we'll just keep it here, so.
Doesn't matter to me.
Let's leave it.
Sorry, what was that, Mike?
Let's leave it.
Okay, sounds great. Number 6 is on me. I haven't done that yet. This was, at least I don't think I've done it. Yeah, I've not done this one yet. This one is still on me. So I will leave that on there. This is, I reported last time on the charter change regarding the graduation stage wording. And this is to update the project progression policy markdown to reflect that change. Number 7 was done, so I crossed that one off. And number 8 is about the TAC white paper, so that one is on the agenda later. I don't think I've missed any, but somebody can stop me if I have. So otherwise, let's go on. And so the next item, I think, is from Outreach. So let's see, Seth, or who wants to talk to this one?
I think I'll let Ava explain it because she's was the genesis of the idea, and it was supported by the broader outreach, and he's got more background. So Ava, do you want to talk to it?
Sure. So large infrastructure system automation, LISA, is one of the, if not the best conference I know of to get changes in technology in front of sysadmins, like the folks who are and have been running deep infrastructure, large infrastructure for a very long time. And I'm not aware of us having had any presence there yet, and I think we should. It's very technical. In the past, when the submission requirements was, you must have a white paper to go with your conference talk. And so it is not the kind of audience that an outreach style sort of high-level summary would do well, but it is the kind of space where a very technical, whether it was from a specific project or vendor, or a couple of folks on the TAC coming to talk about the sort of deep technology here in that space could go well. For comparison, when, say, Kubernetes launched, they had a talk there within the first 18 months, I think. If I remember correctly, it's by Craig McClukey. So my proposal is, if the TAC feels that is a valuable use of time for the TAC to pick a project or a few projects, a sort of survey of the technology, or as we were talking about the panel, maybe one rep from each chip vendor and go there. This would be the best audience for that kind of a technical session.
So I've never been, but it has a very good rep. And I think a panel would work. We could use the white paper, which will hopefully be finished by then, as the basis for a talk by 2 or 3 of TAC members. That would certainly work. Who knows where it's going to be, whether it's going to be virtual or in person these days, by June. But I'm in favor of doing this, honestly.
Do you have any sense, Ava, of what the timeline is in terms of? They haven't issued the call for participation yet. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
as to when they would open the request for talk submissions and things.
I don't. COVID has changed all the timing.
Yeah. So it sounds like right now the question is about intent, since there's nothing we can immediately do until they open the call for participations as far as submitting stuff. And does it fill up? Can you send it in a couple of months from now and still get accepted? I guess it sounds like right now we don't have any idea. And so it sounds like the question right now is about the intent, right? Can we get an agreement that we plan to do something, but there's nothing for us to do yet?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
And we would also consider sponsoring it, from an outreach perspective, and having a presence there if we had a talk accepted.
Does Lisa have booths, or is it just a talk type of conference?
It is just a talk type of conference. Sponsorship, I don't know what it would provide. I've never been a sponsor there before. I've only been a speaker.
I can speak to what they used to do.
Okay.
Because I was going to Lisa for years. They used to have a very simple exposition hall. If you've ever been to Scale, think Scale. A little bit smaller perhaps. So it's 8x10 drape and pole. Put technical people in the booth because you're going to have extremely technical people walking up to you asking questions. So I think this is an excellent place for us to speak. I think it's an excellent space for us to sponsor and stand in an expo hall 8x10 or do the virtual, whatever they choose to do. I used to have to go to Lisa regularly back through the 90s and into the noughties. And I went a couple of years ago again for the first time in a long time just to see if it was still a thing. And it absolutely still is. This is kind of where the cutting edge shows up first to compare notes and talk in the hallways. So it's absolutely appropriate for us.
And is the precedent, to Mike's point about the white paper, is the precedent that in order to get a talk that you have to have a white paper, but having a pre-existing published white paper is perfectly fine?
So that's new. And since I noticed when you were flipping past the screen that Kat Ullman is one of the program chairs, so I'll reach out to Kat to find out.
Yeah. Okay. So noted. Stephen Wally has an action item.
Yeah, joy. But Kat, before Kat went to work for Usenix 20 years ago, sorry, for Google 20 years ago, Kat worked in the Usenix office. So Kat's been around this group for 30 years. So.
Yeah, and my experience with them a couple of years ago, having a white paper was not a hard requirement, but it was encouraged.
Mm-hmm. But you don't have to create a white paper just for Lisa or anything. I just wanted to confirm that. So that
the history of it was actually fairly. It was the flip side of the Usenix annual technical conference. Mm-hmm. The annual technical conference was, high bar, refereed papers, that kind of thing, formal proceedings.
Right. Yep. Lisa
was sysadmins, and they were too busy putting out fires to write
exactly
high bar papers. So the fact that they've actually put any kind of a paper in front of them now is that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so sounds like we do have agreement to do something there, and it sounds like the TAC would be happy to, at least what I'm hearing is the TAC would be happy to do white paper, talk, panel, whatever it is it's appropriate. But we don't have to decide yet until after the call for papers comes out. But the intent sounds like, yeah, we're going to do it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and we're monitoring, or we're putting together a list of conferences and the call for paper dates. Mm-hmm. And we created a form in outreach for people to submit suggested talks. So we'll kind of keep an eye on it and come back to the TAC when it's okay, the call for papers is due on XYZ date. And
And Ava, if I understood your explanation, you implied that it would be appropriate for us to have a CCC thing, but it sounded like you also said that vendors and/or projects could also have talks. Is that right?
My sense of this audience is they will want deeply technical content.
Yeah.
From my outreach perspective, I would like as much of what we're doing to be visible there as possible. So if the TAC chooses something and one or more projects, I think that's a win.
Yeah. So things like, here's how to deploy stuff, or here's some deployment experience, that type of things is the focus?
It is large infrastructure system automation. So yes,
Okay.
anything that is like, here's how to run this at scale, or here's how to secure this at scale. Those are the kinds of talks that I've seen go well in recent years there.
All right, sounds great. So the multiple talk submissions, if there are multiple people that want to submit it from their own company or project or whatever, sounds like that would be potentially welcomed. But I'm
as many confidential computing talks as we can get.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to highlight or ask?
I think that's it.
Okay. Then let's go on. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. All right, so the main body of our meeting is about the TAC white paper. So before I go into this, I just want to confirm, do we have quorum yet?
No, I don't believe we've had anyone join.
Okay, then we'll do that at the end. So let's spend some time on the white paper. So if I remember our timeline, Seth, the open source summit is the end of October. Am I remembering right? It's October 26th?
That sounds right. I'll double check.
And so I think originally Outreach's request was, hey, could we have an initial version of the TAC white paper by then? If I remember, that was originally Outreach's request.
Yeah.
And so we've only got one more TAC meeting since I think the TAC meeting, if we follow our normal schedule, let me put it that way, since it is 4 weeks from today, we'll be in the middle of it. And so the one 2 weeks from today, we would naturally be able to have another TAC meeting, and which is 2 weeks ahead of time, or at least a little under 2 weeks ahead of time. The process that we used for the outreach white paper was that we asked the Linux Foundation's white paper editor to start on it and then just update text as any changes were made. And so I will want to know is, after the end of this call, or maybe 2 days after this call, would it be time to start that process? Not that the white paper is done, but if we think that there's not going to be, large scale movements of sections and so on, I think is where I would like to get to today. And then I guess the other thing that I would point out is, just like happened with the outreach white paper, the first version is different from the current version. It was just a snapshot because Outreach has added the blockchain use case and things that we reviewed before. And so we can always keep updating it after that point, but can we get something good enough by October 26th to be able to be referenceable, I think is our goal. Does that goal sound okay? And later on, I'll ask whether you think that's achievable, but do you think that goal is okay, is an okay goal?
Okay goal.
Okay, great. Let's see if we can actually make it be achievable or not. And so we'll see as we get there. My hope is yes.
I confirmed October 26th is the first day of OSS Europe, and I think Stefano, remind me, we had the lead time on layout. I think it's generally better to get it as done as possible. The copy as final as possible before you send it to layout, up until the date that you want it to. So let's say there's a week lead time, go back a week from October 26th and then, work to get it as finalized as possible rather than kind of repeatedly updating it in layout.
So let's have a goal then to say that by our October 15th meeting, after that, then the goal is after October 15th to send it to start the layout process, because that's a week and a half ahead of time.
Yeah, that would be fine. I think we were maybe 3 or 4 days ahead of time on the, I forget exactly, and that was a bit of a scramble to get it done. So I would say a week. Stefano, does that sound right?
Yeah, I think if we can get it to them at least a week before, it'd be great. I've already given them a link to the draft, and they've already started working on the graphics. So for example, today I'll send out a survey for the Venn diagram. So getting that sort of stuff out of the way also really helps. So
yeah, the largest amount of work is any graphics you might have. in there.
Okay.
So that could be parallelized, you know, if you know what the graphic needs to be now.
Yep.
I figured that Venn diagram wasn't changing.
Yeah, there's the Venn diagram is.
We've had that one for a
document
while.
right there, yeah.
Yeah.
There's that one, and I think that's the only diagram that we have in here.
It's the only
No,
diagram.
there's this one
Oh,
here.
right there is that one.
Yeah. Yeah, we just have the two diagrams right now. So yeah, those are fairly unlikely to change. So those could be started on sooner, given that we haven't really updated those since we were doing the analyst briefings.
I'll add that second graphic if we think that's ready to be worked on.
I think we covered that one in a previous meeting and we didn't have any comments on it. So I would say yes, unless anybody else disagrees. I wouldn't say sawtooth. I don't know what you call this. Timing diagram. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. And when they do that, the diagrams, where is it? The captions don't go in the graphic, right? That goes underneath the graphic, right? So you can see like here, the graphic does not include the caption here. So I would keep the caption outside so we can still change the caption if necessary.
I'll make that note. My guess is that they'll lay it out in their, so they're probably using InDesign for their page layout. And so I'll let them do it however they want. Even if we change the text, it's going to be very simple to change compared to changing the graphic.
Okay, sounds good.
Excellent.
All right, so I'd like to go through, since I think we have time, we don't have any other major topics here, I'd like to go through all the comments in the document, although a lot of our focus will be on the bottom, but I think there's enough things. I did make an editorial pass, and all the things that were simple editorial that were now older than last meeting, I went through and just accepted. And so feel free to do another pass or whatever, but all the comments that are left are either since last meeting or ones that I wasn't sure enough whether they'd been addressed, so I left them open. And so I don't know why this one is showing up here since it's actually in text way down below. So we'll get to that when we get down to the text that's way down below. So one of the things that I wanted to cover, I'll cover it when we get down to that section. You can see there's stuff in the table of contents here, which is a larger question that I've gone back and forth on. So I asked this as a question. And so I'll get to that when we get down to section 7. And this is the one that may or may not involve moving sections around. And that's part of my question. So let's see. Well, let me key off what those topics are right now, just so I don't keep suspense here. I'm going to jump down to this one, which was here. I don't know if Michael, you're on the call. Michael had added in this paragraph here. This is at the bottom of the section on the TE properties and so on. So the trusted execution environments where we define it, and here's the definition. Here's some additional optional properties. And then Michael had proposed this paragraph down here about one example of a standards-based description of a TEs from global platform, where it's defined as this. And so that's the paragraph that we're commenting on here. And so that was my comment was the scoping.md document is where we have multiple other alternate definitions of a TEE. And so my opinion was that we shouldn't highlight one of them here and not other ones, and that paragraph would be more appropriate to add into scoping.md, which we then reference from this document. And then I see, Mike, you commented on that saying you agree. And so that would be my proposal, would be to take Michael's paragraph and move it into the scoping MD document and add a sentence that references the scoping MD document for other definitions and the tax evaluation of them.
Yeah, my only comment would be that
yeah, please.
If we want to talk about edge to cloud use cases, if we want to include use cases which touch on, say, wearables, smartphones and tablets and so on, I think there are quite a few billion devices, unfortunately, that already implements a GPTE environment. So my challenge would be that we could be doing the reader a disservice in not allowing them to consider if they want to have use cases where they might have edge deployments. So that's my only concern.
So my,
Go ahead, Mike.
yeah, I was going to say, my concern is as far as I'm aware, we've not done an audit, if you will, of the global platform TE definition to see whether it accords with ours. If it does, then we're probably okay, but I think we need to do audit first. And if it doesn't, we have a problem. And that's actually, I reference that later on in this document in another comment.
I will say that I think the discussion, so I see Hannes is on the call. So I think in the context of the IETF TEEP working group that Hannes and I are active in, we have had a similar discussion because there have been global platform people appearing in there. And if you remember, the definition of a TEE that we, the TAC, settled on matches the definition that the working group settled on because we've had communication back and forth. And so to Mike's point, I don't know, I think we have covered global platform in a sentence in the scoping MD document, but the IETF has looked at it. I'd say we, Hannes and me and those other people from some of the companies on this call have looked at it. And I believe that the IETF TEEP working group's position would be that a global platform TE under their definition is a TEE under our definition, but not vice versa. In other words, this is a more narrow definition that says only TEEs under our definition that would conform to the GP profile are things that GP would call TEE. But everything that's in there, we would still call a TEE, meaning their profile does match our three required features up there, but other TEs wouldn't conform to their spec, but would still have those three features. And so that's why I'm comfortable personally saying the use cases you called out, Michael, I think are still covered. And our intent in the white paper is that they would still perfectly be relevant, but we wouldn't make a comment as to whether they would need to conform to the GP spec. But to Mike's comment, my summary is I believe that the IETF community has verified that the GP profile
okay.
is conformed.
And although, you know, in no sense do I not trust you, that transitive trust relationship is one that we need to make explicit.
Absolutely.
You either say we trust the IETF or the TAC needs to make a decision itself.
Absolutely agree. And Hannes, please check me, but that is my understanding because people like Ming and folks the whole thing started from the global platform community and then came into the IETF. And so Jeremy and Ming and so on. So.
Yeah, so you copied over the definition into the CCC documents that we sort of like we sorted out?
Yes, the definition in the scoping document as quoted here matches the definition in the abstract of the TEEP architecture document. Okay. Abstract introduction, but you can't get any more prominent than the abstract. And so we made the wording changes so that they are word for word identical.
So this feels like something which we should certainly consider for the next iteration of this white paper, but I think it's going to take too much work to get this in for this version. So my suggestion is we move it out for now, but certainly consider it as a next thing. Everyone happy with that?
I think that the points that Michael made about the use cases, I think, are absolutely in scope for the use cases.
Yeah, so I do understand the desire to get moving quickly. So I am happy with considering a wider scope of the definition and potentially have that as a subset of the definition. I think, factually, as an informative document, I do see a lot of value in that. So that would be my comment.
Yeah, and I agree that we need to be addressing the edge very much.
Yeah, so no, I'm saying that we can move on. I just don't want us to lose sight of this other ecosystem that is.
No, you're quite right. You're quite right.
Yeah.
So, are we happy to park this particular comment and then look at when we further on later on?
My proposal is that we move this text here into scoping.md, and somewhere in this section we add a reference to the scoping MD, which we pointed to from the analyst briefing and so on. that, for more discussion of different definitions, something like that, see the text evaluation at, reference 5.
I think that's good. I'm happy with that as a proposal. Let's try it.
So I'm going to, as a note to myself, I made wordsmith, but I'm going to at least capture it in here. So for more discussion of TEE definitions used in the industry, see the TAC discussion at something along those lines. We can wordsmith, but that's at least the intent. So
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
okay, so that was what the top one was, which is out of order or something. This discussion, I'm going to explain what it is right now and kind of jump around, because this is basically following up on that action item that I said was on the agenda. We had this discussion last time that like 2 or 3 things were all intertied, right? So one comment was Simon's point about the labeling of, I guess it's not up in here. It didn't show up in the table of contents. It has to be refreshed or whatever. There was the labeling of the direct anonymous attestation, where Simon Johnson's comment in there was something like we should change it, and we'll get to it when we get down there, right? I'm saying these 3 things tied in. So the label on that section was about changing it to be about anonymous versus non-anonymous or anonymity or something. We had the discussion about the ordering of these sections versus the ordering of the properties in the property sections, where recoverability versus attestability were in a different order up there. And then there was a discussion about things that were down here that maybe should be moved up higher. And so the relationship between these 2 sections and the TE properties is kind of the overall bundle that those things fall into, is what's the relationship between the TE properties section and the section down here? Is this a section about attestation, or is this a section about the attestability property and the recoverability property? It's kind of the meta question, okay? And so depending on what you think is the answer, is this about attestation, or is this about a particular TE property that's optional, might affect whether you think that section 7 should appear under section 4.1 or after section 4.1 versus down after the discussion of related technologies and threat model. So I didn't make any changes there because I wanted to tee up this question: is this the right order, or should section 7 actually be up here before section 5? And that's something I would love to hear people's opinions on. And maybe you want to defer that until we get down into the text in there, but that's what that topic is should section 7 move up before section 5 and maybe be under section 4? Or not, right? Because that's why I phrase this as a question. Because if this is really about details on attestation as opposed to attestability, meaning if this change here would be wrong, then it might be correct where it is. So any initial thoughts before we get down into the actual details?
No, let's carry on.
Okay. So that was my summary of what that's going to be about. So that's what the not sure about this change need to discuss. Okay, and you can see maybe we should move these under section 4.1. Those are the things that I would like an opinion on by the time we get to the bottom. So all right, so we haven't done this one yet. We still need somebody. Thomas is not on the call today, correct? Thomas Harjono is not on right now.
Actually, I believe he is.
Thomas, you brought up the comment about the technical audience and clarifying in more detail who the right technical audience is. And we said we were going to replace or augment the highlighted sentence here. And all I remember from that details is what's captured in this comment here. So can you repeat your comment or maybe give a suggested phrase or something like that from what you remember of the discussion? I'd have to go back to the transcript, so.
Thomas, you might be speaking to mute. Or we may have technical difficulties.
All right, if you get audio, please jump back in. We can come back to this one, but this is one we still need an action item on. I thought we had agreed to make some change here, but then when I looked at it yesterday, I couldn't remember what the wording suggestions were without having to go back through the transcript and stuff from that meeting. So if you can remind us, then it will be easier to either do it live or make enough notes that it's easy to do it after the call. All right, so I'm going to go on, but if Thomas, you get audio, please speak up. So, okay, so then we have this notion I wanted to verify, which is Mike's addition of remove, which was before last call. We didn't explicitly talk about it, and so I didn't accept it yet, but I don't have any objection. But I think this is a a technical issue that I want to make sure we have tech agreement on before I just click accept. Okay. And so, Mike, if you want, you can talk to this one because there's actually.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you could say that alter covers both cases, add and remove, or change. I think if we say add, we should probably say remove as well, because that's all three cases, I think, then covered. It's just for completeness.
So the thing that I put into my comment down here yesterday was, I want to make sure nobody has an objection to this particular wording. I don't, but the thing that I want to highlight is, data integrity. Does this mean that somebody can't prevent can't, not removing code, but say removing data pages, right? I can't say mess with the page table to say that page is now inaccessible, so you'll crash or something, or that I can't physically remove a memory chip. Is that something that goes under remove? Because you're not altering
no,
the
because that's
data.
data. I mean, you could say the same about.
And the same thing for code, right? You could do the same thing with a code page or with a binary on disk, although the binary on disk is not while it's executing, right? And so it's code pages and data pages. Do we need to have any caveats there is my only concern, but I'm actually okay with listing remove there unless somebody else wants a different change. So what's your opinion on that one, Mike? You think it's fine as is?
Yeah, I wrote it. I'm happy with it. I take your point, but I don't think it needs further.
Okay. If nobody else has any concerns about now that I've raised the concern, then I'm happy to click accept on both of these. I'm not hearing any objections unless everybody else is having audio problems. Then I'm going to just go ahead and click accept on both of these now that we've covered that. Okay. And people can always feel free to add other comments and changes. So, all right. This one, by the way, we talked about this last time I did the change here. I said I was going to reorder attestability and recoverability just because that's the order that we cover them later on in the document, with the TCB recovery being after the attestation section. And so there's no actual change in the text here. This is just me moving this bullet up one. So, okay, oops, that one, nothing there. I've gone through and did a suggestion to remove all action items since I think all the sections are filled in right now. And so after this call, unless there's any new action items, I'm just going to go through and delete all the action item ones saying anybody that had an action item is now done. The action items are now to do editing and so on, which is anybody. This is the text that we just talked about here. And so temporarily, I'm going to take this and move it into the created just like Outreach did. At the bottom of his, there is a copy graveyard, which is text to be moved into other places. And so I don't want to lose that. And so here's that text, and this is to be moved into scoping.md. And so, Michael, you're welcome to generate a PR, or I can, but I would like this done between this meeting and next meeting. If you don't, I will, but you're welcome to if you want to. So that when we add the reference to it, then the references actually goes to someplace. So let's see, where were we? I'll get back right up into where we were. Right there. Okay. All right. Simon, your comment looks fine, although this is tied to the discussion about whether section 7 moves up here, and then we would not need this. So I'm going to leave this as unaccepted until after we talk about that. That would be fine if we leave it where it is. So this one was the same thing here, where testability and recoverability, I just swapped the order of the rows to match. So that was that one and that one. Okay. Down below, we talk about TCB recovery. We don't specifically talk about unspoofability. Way back when we first did this table, we said that those are kind of the same thing. And just to make it match, I only wanted one term here. Does anybody object to just deleting the word unspoofability here and just calling this recoverability?
Good.
Okay. Silence or goods equals consent. This one, authenticated launch, you can see up here, we had this bullet that was added somewhat recently, the authenticated launch discussion, but it wasn't in the table down here. And so I added it and tried to guess at, because everything else it matches in this one in exactly the same order, okay? And so I added this one, but we've never talked about the values of this column. So I wanted to talk about what should be these three things. This is just my guess, okay? So I would accept this left one, but I have no idea what to put in these three things. So I want to talk about this, since this is actually a technical thing we want to make sure that the TAC all agrees with. And again, this table is prefixed with the actual values of anything here can vary by vendor, model, and algorithm. And so the values of cells are typical examples. The first three properties that highlight the key differences in the security properties. So everything down below, we want maybe what the most common or typical or something answer is.
Okay, so
what would
the
you
question
like
then, what does some mean? Does that mean some platforms do it, or you can have some authentication launched? Because if it's typical examples, do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I put this in as a straw man last night because I figured we'd change it during the call here. What I was thinking is some things have it, some things don't. But what do we think it should say? Again, the most common or most typical would be the best thing to put in here.
Or varies.
Okay, I like that.
Well, I'm just suggesting it. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts.
You know, I think originally we had, at one point, we talked about authenticated boot, just to say the difference between, say, measured boot and authenticated boot. And then we said, when you're talking about things like trusted applications, it's not necessarily boot time, it's whenever that one is launched, which might be a boot time, it might be later. And so that's why this authenticated launch is a more generalized version of authenticated boot. You know, like an SGX enclave typically isn't at boot, it's whenever it gets launched, whereas things like in Trust Zone, a system TA or something might be at boot. And so there's multiple possibilities. That's why it's authenticated launch, just for explaining for anybody who wasn't in the original discussion where we came up with that term.
I think this is fine. I think it's worth having in. I think it's clear enough now. So.
And so homomorphic encryption, I claim no. And TPMs, I would defer to somebody that's a TPM expert as to whether there's something that's equivalent. I guess there's a little bit of a distinction between what's provided for things outside the TPM versus the TPM itself. If you think about code integrity, you can see this is applying to the code that's inside the TPM itself, which is not programmable. So like the ROM inside the TPM. And so if you think about that, then maybe that code would be a yes. What do we think that TCG would say if they saw this column? What would TCG's answer be?
TPM 1.2 is a no.
Okay.
I can't remember what TPM 2 does. They've got a so I guess it depends on the object, right? But they might say, you have to be in a certain state to unlock. So for instance, depends on the authorization model that you put on an object. But in order to decrypt that key, you may have to be in a certain state. The platform has to be in a certain state before you use it. And
that's launch though, that's not use.
Well, in their case, right, launch is use.
But we're talking about launching the platform, not about using particular.
No. It's about launching the TEE.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, TPM, not TE. There's no TE here.
Well,
TPM is a TE in this example.
There is. The TE is the TPM itself. It's just a not programmable TE. If you look at our Venn diagram up here, we're talking about this right here, which is not programmable. And so that's why it's right on the border, whether you call it, it's certainly a TEE in the overall fuzzy sense, right? But it's not necessarily within the scope of what we're doing, which is the programmable part. So it's disjoint with the programmable part, but it is in the trusted execution environment. The TPM chip itself is the TE because the code in the chip itself provides these three things.
Okay, let's skip it. I hate it, but that's fine.
So what should this one be for the code in the TPM itself? I might claim it's yes, because it's ROM, right? If it's not programmable, I would claim that you could make an argument that says everything for which is a no ought to be a yes up here.
No, ROM launch isn't an authenticated launch. It's just an immutable launch.
Okay, so let's go to the definition of authenticated launch. It's up here. Some TEs may enforce authorization or authentication checks prior to launching a requested process and may refuse to launch a process which is not authorized or authenticated. That's the current working definition.
Right. Under that definition, the code of a TPM that just loads, right, is not authorized. It just is.
Okay. So would you say, at least for TPM 1.2, would you say no? Would you say not applicable?
No, I would say no.
Okay. So then.
You're changing program. Yeah.
Okay. So then is everybody okay on the call with the row as it stands now? Any objections to accepting the row as it is now? People are free to comment on it. We can cover it next meeting if people have comments. Okay. If not, then I'm going to go ahead and click accept suggestion. Okay. And this one was a phrase to match from one of Mike's comments on the next section. Mike, your comment was this one, such and such is vendor specific, and all the cells are vendor specific. And so I added some text up here and then added this phrase to match. And so.
Yeah, that's fine. It's good.
Okay, so I'm going to accept this one, and then here's the text that I added above this one to address Mike's comment. There was no intro text. There was intro text above this one, above security comparisons, and text below it, but this one was missing the text. So I'll let people stare at that one for 1 minute here, and then I'll move on, or 15 seconds or something. I'll move on unless somebody stops me. Okay. Unless there's any objections, feel free to review offline and suggest any changes for next time if necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and accept. Okay. And then, Mike, I believe your comment here is now addressed.
Yeah, I'm happy to lose that.
Okay. All right. So next one. All right. This discussion here. So we did talk about this one last time, which we had leave out of white paper. We edited this during the meeting, I think, and leave out of, or maybe 2 times ago, leave out of white paper, but discuss in the TAC. Michael, you then made an edit, and then that was a while back before the last meeting, but I didn't remove this yet. Mike added a comment here, and so I think our intent is we're going to move this to copy graveyard and figure out where to best put it. Is that a?
I managed to make a comment at least, which I don't think you showed. I managed to make another comment right underneath Mike's comment.
Okay.
Essentially, is it not shown at all?
I got to find the right one here. Yeah,
I can't see it.
Yeah, the last one.
It's all right. So I'll just say it.
It might be this one.
Yeah, that is. Sorry, my editing just seemed to gone a bit able. My point was that we can ignore that there is a assurance regime in the GP definition. I'm okay with that. As Mike rightly said, we are not referring to that definition. My central question still remains, which is, in my mind, this is still a marketing white paper, and white paper in my mind speaks to key stakeholders. We want to change certain behavior. If we want them to say, this is great stuff, let me go and talk to my vendor and see what I can do, what I can purchase already, what I can deploy. There will be a question, which is, I've got 10 vendors here. Which one is more secure? Are they equally the same? Is there any way for me to validate this? So we're not answering this question at all in this white paper, and that is a concern for me because I've spoken to CISOs before. How would they decide?
Oh, we want to start an argument about whether assurance actually tells you whether something is more secure than another?
No, I do not want to start that argument at all. No.
Okay. Let's not talk about assurance then.
It's an argument that no one will win and everyone will feel aggrieved.
Okay, so
but is it right to say if a particular vendor is more secure than another? Isn't it more a pertinent question is what features are covered by one vendor or another?
I think we're talking about a security system here. So I think usually when you make security claims, you usually also try to back it up with something else. And it's not clear what this something else is from this white paper.
Okay, so I think that the first sentence of this is very useful.
Mhm.
I think the second is useful if we have other examples. Although I disagree with the words obtain proof of security claims. That is not proof, in my humble opinion, but that's fine. I think if you have other examples, I think it becomes a really, really useful paragraph.
Okay, understood. I agree with the objection against proof. I would say evidence. I think evidence is probably a more appropriate thing. The second thing is that if we use the TPM example, a lot of them are based on secure chips, and these secure chips actually sometimes do have security evaluation regimes associated with it. So that's the other example I can think of.
Except we're not using TPMs as an example. They're a counterexample because they don't come under our definition of a hardware TE.
Well, technically we say it's only partly there. It does come under a definition of a TE, they're just not programmable. It doesn't come under the CCC's scope because we're the programmable ones, but it is a TEE under meeting those three criteria.
Yeah,
it's sort of crossing the border.
It still shouldn't be something we should be using as an example if it's not something that we are within the scope of what we're talking about.
Right. So to Michael's point about evidence, I would prefer to use a term other than evidence, and the reason for that is the term evidence is the term that the attestation architecture uses for the claims sent from the attester to the verifier. And so I'm trying to avoid terminology collision. And so that's why I would like a term, because here we're not talking about that.
Yes, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
And so that's why I suggested a stronger level of assurance, maybe. I was just explaining why, although I don't disagree that your term evidence would be correct here, it just happens to be terminology collision with another meaning of it that would be used elsewhere in the white paper.
So I object to the term a stronger level of assurance.
Okay, do you have a better suggestion?
Remove it. Just no. A stronger level. One is to obtain assurance through a third-party evaluation, right?
Assurance of security claims. Are you okay with the of security claims?
Well, so one way is to obtain assurance of security claims of products through evaluation by a third-party evaluation laboratory.
How about that?
I agree with Simon on this.
Okay. So Simon, how about, are you okay with this wording as it stands now? One way is to obtain assurance of security claims about products through evaluation.
All right. I disagree with the third statement. We have not.
Which one?
Which is one example, right?
No. Are you okay with these first two sentences now before we go on to the last part?
So.
I see Mike is still editing other parts, but the highlighted parts up here is.
Can we change the word? Can we change the word claim to statement?
I agree with that. Only because claims also has a separate meaning about the content in, say, messages between an attester and a verifier, or certificates and things. Okay.
Right.
So I don't know. Is there a way to accept this much of it?
Well,
I guess I can accept. I'll accept that one, which will do it, and I'll accept.
Oh, weird things going.
I'm trying to leave the entire paragraph as still not accepted, right? But the changes in here are is what I was trying to do. So
I think we're stretching multiple editing of Google at the.
There we go. Yeah, you can see now the whole thing is still blue and unaccepted, but those changes we just made. All right, so Mike, you want to talk us through what you were just editing?
Yeah, so I think that having an example is good. So it says one is to obtain assurance in this way.
No. I say strike that third sentence, the whole thing.
Can I also give quite a few other examples of evaluation regimes existing in other ecosystems which may fit?
No, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary.
Because?
Well, you've got other approaches. It makes so the other approach. You know, you say what one is to obtain assurance through third-party evaluation laboratories, and then you say other approaches, including accepting routes. I think that's acceptable.
So Simon, you're saying the point about global platform is just an example of the one way here, and you don't need this particular example to keep this one here, and the other approaches as alternatives to third-party evaluation. Did I get your point right?
Yep.
Okay, so just so we have another change to track here, Simon, you are proposing keeping the one way, but deleting the example that references global platform. Is that what you're saying, Simon?
Yep.
I agree.
And then what is your other examples here? Mike, looks like you weren't done yet. You have typos here. So.
No, I was done. I just couldn't type very well.
All right. I'm going to try to pretty up so it's actually easier to read here. Huh. Didn't change the font. Weird. Other approaches include accepting roots of trust from specific vendors, audit of open source components in hardware, firmware, and/or software, and certification by industry or standards bodies.
Good sentence, Mike.
Mike, I do have a question. What does it mean? What does it mean by accepting roots of trust?
Yeah, I didn't follow this one either.
Trust means.
What does that mean, Mike?
Yeah, and okay, that's fair. It's not. It's
how about we delete that because we're trying to say there's multiple examples.
It's not. Okay.
I got to mute for a second. My phone is ringing. I can find my mute button. Otherwise, it's going to disturb all of you.
How's that?
I don't know. Mike, I like the term roots of trust though, because
that's really about the attestation, right? Are we in the attestation section? No, we're not.
No, we're in the threats and mitigation section.
Yeah.
So I think rather than accepting assurances, right, it's other approaches include using roots of trust from specific investors.
I don't understand how that. There's many ways for actors to establish trust in the TEE. I don't know what the intent of this phrase is yet. So I don't know if you can explain.
Okay, so what I mean is that I've spent enough time with, let's say, Simon and his engineering team from Intel that I am happy that to accept that is Intel's assurances about the security guarantees of a TEE. And that's a perfectly acceptable commercial and risk position to take.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So here, when you say the word assurances, if I understand, the security statements about products, you're using assurances synonymous with that phrase. Because you're just accepting the security statements about products from specific vendors, statements from specific vendors about their products.
So my challenge would be you are accepting a claim, you are not accepting an assurance. You are accepting claims from certain specific vendors. I would say that's a more appropriate description.
Yeah, okay.
Accepting, I would say security statements.
Well, I would just say using I think we're getting a little lawyerly like now.
Remember, up above we changed claims to security statements, right? That was the change we did up here. Was claims should be security statements.
Can I just make one other comment?
Actually, though. Sorry.
Go ahead, Michael.
Is that security engineering is one of the most pedantic disciplines I've worked in, and I respect it a lot because you are almost as pedantic as I am.
Okay, Mike, turn your head for a second here. Okay, go on.
Okay. All right.
I think we're having too much fun with this.
Yes. Welcome to the TAC.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but we're but on the word claims here. Can we say? I just want to use unless you say it's a different meaning. Whatever up here we had claims, and we just edited it to say security statements about products instead of claims. And I thought from your verbal description you had the same meaning, and so I don't want to use the word claims if we're not using it up here. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I can live with it. It's not my dying on hill. I've got lots of those, and this isn't one of them. So.
Okay. So this is getting hard to read, and so I would like to accept this and then keep editing it if necessary.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay. So I think I can accept this. I think I have to individually.
And this is your fault,
over.
Michael, because it's a really useful paragraph
Yeah.
that we realized that we need to do really good stuff with. So I'm blaming you.
Okay, that's fine.
In a good way, right?
Indeed. I think I'm saying that it's only through conflict resolution can we have constructive and diverse and cohesive output. You can tell that I'm in marketing also.
We forgive you that, just about.
Okay, there we go. Read through that again now that it's easier to see. Okay.
All right.
All right. Have we spent enough time on this one? Should we keep going? And people can feel free to.
Well, so
or Simon, go ahead.
So my question now is now that we have agreed on text, is it in the right place?
Okay. Fair question. Let's see more context here. This is in the threat model, the goal of the threat model section, because it's more about the trust model than the threat model per se, right? Is there a place? Is there any better place? I should ask, Simon.
There may not be, but as an editing point, I don't like a paragraph that says finally and then there's something that comes after it.
Ah, okay. So we may want to change this word. So I was looking for a discussion of. I was just saying that this is actually more about the trust model than the threat model. But if you look at the preceding sentence, it's talking about different trust models, and so it doesn't not flow well, meaning I'm okay with it where it is if we change the word finally.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because it does kind of naturally follow from the previous sentence, so. Yeah, okay. All right, anything else on this section, or should we go on? We can come back to it next time, but I think we've made a bunch of good progress here. Thank you, Michael, for.
Actually, Michael, can we delete the "it is recognized" as well, and just start the sentence with "in some cases"?
Which
Sure.
sentence are you talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. I mean, it doesn't change the meaning. So so whenever you delete something and the meaning doesn't change, it means that it was surplus in the first place.
Yes. Right. Okay. That reads better.
All right. So I'm going to go on. Feel free to keep commenting or whatever, and we can come back to it next meeting. So I would like to be able to get all the way to the end, even if there's action items and things we need to follow up on. So, so Michael, you have a question here.
I think that was associated with an earlier.
Okay.
So that was
right.
my editing going
okay.
over. You can remove the comment. Fine. Yeah.
Done. Okay, so we did talk about this one a little bit last time, but we didn't note what we need to change on this one. So, Mike, do you remember what we need to do about these two bullets here that you?
No idea at all.
Okay, because all I have is here, which we did talk about before. I said I don't have an opinion yet as to whether to include this as a separate bullet. I did have a comment on quantum resistance, which I think it is good for us to consider. Whether it's mentioned in here, I don't have an opinion, but it is something that we as the TAC should consider as in scope for our discussions.
Yes, in scope for discussion and in scope for whether we expect it to be mitigated by a vendor.
Well, so my response here from before was that protocols and things use crypto algorithms. even in like the IETF discussions, there are algorithms that are talked about as being quantum resistant, and
which
that
are
protocols should be
believed to provide quantum resistance.
correct. That's always true for any type of
Yeah.
current, whether it's quantum or not, right? Until proven otherwise, right? You say it hasn't been broken yet, right? But the point is that protocols should be crypto agile, right? So that not baked in to be a single one is a good protocol design point. And so there are discussions in the IETF, and so I think there should be similarly in scope for our discussions, and that there are things people can do that's better than nothing.
There are two things here. One is making the underlying hardware able to implement crypto-resistant algorithms and making that crypto-agile, to which good luck. And the other is allowing higher level, maybe firmware or implementations within able to be crypto-agile and present quantum-resistant properties.
Excellent point.
Very different things.
I think that's a good point.
Unless Intel
I think
or AMD or ARM can tell us that they can do the first one, in which case, well done. We should be clear.
You also have to be careful that there are export regulations around crypto with a hole in it. So that gets you into all sorts of other legal complications.
I'm just taking notes in here. I don't know what the actual phrasing would be. I could be taking them over here, but at least since it's blank right now, this is more of a to-do, right?
And there are good arguments for implementing some crypto-resistant components in TEs because of timelines, life cycles, and uses of crypto and uses of data, which is kind of why I flagged it, because it's a really interesting thing. We could spend an entire white paper talking about it, which I don't think we want to do.
Okay, so I think that your summary would actually make for a good piece of text in here. And so something that says the points here, which is there's some types of cryptographic algorithms or some uses of cryptographic algorithms where the cryptographic algorithms might be implemented in hardware themselves. And then other things that would be in software. And crypto agility is good in general, but it's much harder to, or perhaps impractical to do crypto agility in hardware. And so crypto agility is best done in software. And so this is something that is in scope for confidential computing, is that discussion. So something
okay,
that kind of gets
I plan to do some work on exactly these bullets tomorrow morning, my time.
Okay.
I think it's worth spending some time on. I think I know where we want to go with this. So
okay, great. Action item, Mike. Okay. So anyway, hopefully that's enough notes for you to remember what to do here.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and then anything else on this one, or you're saying you're just going to do some work on it and we'll review it next time? That's fine.
Yeah, that's right. That's fine.
Okay.
While we're in this section, I've been meaning to add a comment regarding the supply chain attacks. So under out of scope, it's listed like advanced supply chain attacks or something are out of scope. Or upstream hardware supply chain attacks. Yeah, so I think that needs to be modified a little bit so that supply chain attacks that can be carried out that in the same vein as the basic hardware attacks that are in scope are also in scope, right? Like if a vendor like inserts a bus probe on your motherboard, that's I think that should be in scope.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, put that down for me as well. I'll try and have a go at that.
Okay.
I'm just calling out the connection about 3 paragraphs up. There's a mention of the same thing.
Yeah, it's how you combine the two, I think, is the point that's being made.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like up here, you had talking about basic physical attacks are in scope. Then down there, you're talking about hard supply chain attacks are not in scope, but there's an intersection between the two.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll take that. That's an interesting one. Thank you.
Okay. Great. So now I'm going to delete that one now that it's covered up here. Okay, so basic physical, basic supply chain, sophisticated. So up here we have basic physical, and down here sophisticated hardware. Is physical and hardware synonymous, or are those two? Is one a superset of the other? Physical here, hardware here. Between basic and sophisticated, seems like if they're the same, we should use the same term.
This is stolen directly from the analyst stuff, I think. So we should use. I don't mind. Whichever. Yeah, be consistent.
Since we say physical over here,
yep.
I'm just changing this word, so now it's all consistent. So, okay. All right, moving down. Let's see. We still need to incorporate Sarah's point here, which we did talk about before. But and I left this in because I wasn't clear. I think Mike, you added the sentence here. Was this to address Sarah's comment? And do we think that the text that Mike added is sufficient to address Sarah's comment, or do we need more? And said that Sarah's comment was it's not specific to confidential computing. It happens to be in confidential computing.
Was Sarah not on the call last time? I thought she was and said that it was okay.
She was, I think, but I didn't remember whether this came in. But I want to know, can I just accept and delete these, or is there more to do on Sarah's point?
I think we're fine.
Okay.
Unless anyone disagrees.
Yeah, I don't think Sarah was actually on the call, but I did talk to her about it. I think she wanted to point out that it's actually not just tools that haven't even just conventional computing, just running code on a CPU is subject to subpanels as well.
So I think what you said is whether we should say something like that phrase or not.
Classical computing, yes.
Classical computing is the phrase we used at the top that was Mike's, like in the very first thing.
But
Mike
classical computing just means not quantum.
No, well, here I thought, okay, fair enough. I lost my place here, so finding it again. Yeah, there's the place that it was, and then there and here, and so.
I assume we use it here to mean not confidential computing.
Well, in this case, it's nothing to do with TEEs or protecting data in use, so.
Yeah.
You saw where it appeared at the top, which was in the section that said, classical computing, people pay attention to data at rest and data in flight. And in confidential computing, we care about data in use as well. And so I don't know, because TPMs and HSMs are both in the protection of some type of data in use, even if that data is just keys. Fair enough. Okay, that's fine. Okay. I'm happy with that, Michael.
Cool.
So, and then replace. Okay, there we go. All right. Continuing on. Okay, so this is another one that I want to know whether we're okay to delete this now. Delete the comment now and just accept it, or whether there's more to talk about here. There's been a couple of edits today, and Mike, you said something about you think.
Yeah, I'm just rereading it.
Because the previous comment resulted in you adding this phrase here, which I think we were all happy with, but I want to go ahead and accept that.
Yeah, fine. I think I'm happy with the text as is, as long as we don't have anything about libOS stuff.
Okay, is there any reason to keep this italicized, or should this be unitalicized?
It should be unitalicized. I think it's just added that way by accident.
I thought I tried to unitalicize it. We'll see. I'll do it again.
You just do that and then do normal text. It should apply. There we go. Done. It's done.
You did it. Okay, great. Yep, got it. Okay. So now we're into the section that I have as the question, and I'm happy to reject these if people don't like this. This is where previously we had attestation, and then as a subsection underneath attestation was the direct anonymous attestation, and then another subsection underneath there was recoverability. Okay, and so under one argument, recoverability is not a subset of attestability. It's a parallel thing, and so that's why maybe one thing is this section, the recoverability or recovery section, should be in parallel, not one under the other. But the overall question is, should this be moved up to the T property section or left down here? And so, again, I'll ask that again when we get down to there, because I would like a decision on that. But let's look at the actual text first and go through these. And that's probably going to be the last question that I ask on this, and is to come back to that decision.
I think this is where you're into the finer points of things, right? The construction of the white paper is tell people what these things are. You can go and read further down the paper.
Yep.
And then I want to hit on other big topics first before I get to these specific things, because they really won't make much sense if you don't understand these other bits, right?
Yep.
So I think I don't think I like the additional TE properties, right?
No,
I think
this was, if it was going to be moved up, then this heading would go away either way. So that.
Yeah.
But do you like calling this attestability? Or do you like this section being called attestation? Would be one way to phrase the first question. You know, up above, just for context, up above, we say a property of a TEE. Where is it? You can see attestability is typically yes, and for other things no. But you could have non-attestable TEEs. We just don't think they're as secure per se. All these are great qualities to have, but up here it's called attestability, which we defined as here, which I would informally say the ability to be attested, right? And so then we have this long section down below that gives more details about attestation, which is only relevant for everything that is attestable, which has attestability yes, which is most things. And so the question is, should we call that section attestability or attestation? If we leave it as attestation, then it's perfectly fine where it is. I was thinking about this because you see recoverability here, and you see the amount of text that's right here. Okay. I'm going to go down to the bottom here and cover stuff a little bit out of order. Here's the amount of text in the what was formerly called TCB recovery.
Yeah.
And you can see it's about the same amount of text. And the first word is, recoverability, which came from you, Simon, right? You can see it's the same thing. And so one possibility is this paragraph here and the formerly shown paragraph from above should be combined, and we don't need a whole section for this. Is it really elaborating if the amount of text is the same? That's what I'm not sure. So that's what led me to this. And we had observed last time that we had sections on that kind of covered attestability, that kind of covered recoverability, but not ones that covered, say, code confidentiality or programmability. And so the action item was assigned to me to say, hey, should we have some text on that? And I said, well, I can't think of anything else to say that's not in that single paragraph that's up above. So I don't think we need a paragraph for a single paragraph. And I look at this one that says, you know, a subsection for a single paragraph. And I look at this one, we have a subsection for a single paragraph. So maybe this one goes up there. And so that's what led me to this whole line of thought that I wanted people's thoughts on, because this is really about moving text around that I don't have a strong opinion on, other than it seems odd to have a whole section for one paragraph on one point, but not other things that are only one paragraph on their points.
Okay, I think it's more important to get the text right, honestly.
Yep.
We're sounding like lawyers. Hi, Michael.
So if people don't care, then between this section and next section, I'm going to take a shot at having the recoverability text move up. And right now, my proposal would be to leave this as attestation, not attestability, down here, and leave this in where it is. I think that's the least changes, and unless people argue for it, that's where I'm leaning towards, but I don't have a strong preference. So
I'm good with that.
Okay. So if we do that, I'm going to reject this here. I'm going to reject all the, let's see, comment. I'm going to say no. I'm going to reject that one, and I'm going to reject that one, and I'm going to reject that one. And now we're back to the way it was, and then the action item on me is maybe see if this one can be action item Dave see if this can be incorporated into the earlier paragraph. Okay. All right, now we're done with that one. Attestation section, we had a bunch of changes that we talked about last time. I explained that I did an editorial pass to try to make terminology match with IETF. I accepted those things that we talked about last time, made some additional ones as I went through another pass. And so we talked about 3 issues that I've tried to address with this flow here, and this gets to Mike's comment about, is this really generic? And I mentioned during the call last time that no, and I gave 3 examples of why it wasn't generic enough. So I tried to genericize a little bit and then added this, which is a meaning change to say, as an example, a protocol might consist of 3 phases, right? And I gave a counterexample last time where if you use a secure timestamp based one, then you might not have a challenge. And the IETF document does use that as an example. So this one is a valid case, and it may even be a common one, but it is not generic enough to say that all of them in that category. And we'd already added a reference to the IETF one. I said for a longer discussion, including other variations was the phrase there, which we don't have to then discuss the details in here, right? We're just saying, here's a typical example. And for other variations, see that document, which we don't have to repeat. So that was my intent of how to address the discussion we had last time. I had deleted this sentence here, or this phrase here, and say the verifier verifies the signature and appraises the evidence. And the reason that I deleted this had to do with genericizing it a little bit, because there are cases where there's multiple signatures because you have layered attestation. So in like a dice-like scheme, your evidence has say the hardware signing the firmware, which then signs the OS, which signs the trusted application, that type of thing. And so you have multiple signatures to verify, and only the first one in the sequence, the root of the chain, if you will, it uses the credential of the trusted hardware component, and the other ones inherit the one that's signed by the trusted hardware component is a software one, and then that one signs the next one, and so on. So it's more detailed, and so I thought that level of detail could be just removed without loss of meaning, and so I just deleted that here. I'm just explaining why I deleted that, because I thought it's actually more generic if that's deleted. So.
As far as I'm concerned, I think I'm happy with all of these changes.
Okay.
I think they're very good.
Okay, I'm going to mark this as resolved then, Mike.
I would love to know whether AMD or ARM have looked at these, but it's not my my place to force them to do so.
So I know there's ARM people on the call, multiple of them, and I know some of the ARM people have been active in the IETF discussion, and so in some sense, I'm hoping that some of my changes are aligned with what you would have wanted. But let us know if not. If you have the changes.
I'm good with isolation, evaluation, and certain things, architecture for TEEs. I am not the attestation expert. Our 2 attestation experts, one is Hannes, the other one is a guy called Simon Frost. Haven't had a chance to review the doc yet, so I'll need to ping them and chase them. Okay.
Well, Hannes is still on the call, right?
No, he's not. He managed to escape, but the discussion got involved.
Yeah, Hannes is one that I would want to make sure that he's okay with the text. So, action item, Hannes. If you can follow up with Hannes and see if he can do a review of this text between now and the 15th.
Okay, I'll chase him.
Okay, got it. Stefano, if you can note that Michael has an action item, which is to get Hannes to review.
Just took that.
It may not be Hannes. It may not be Hannes.
Okay, fair enough.
Another attestation lead who will be joining the CCC, and I'll make sure one of them does. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to see if we can get rid of some. So we've talked about this. So here, I think we've addressed this one here, but by way of example, because you said, why does it have to be over a secure connection? How does it become secure? So Simon, my opinion is once we've said that this is an example, then I believe that is sufficient to say there might be other ways to do it. But let me know if you have it with your view.
That's fine.
Okay, then I'm gonna mark that one as resolved.
I'm not gonna die in a ditch on that one.
Okay. your next comment, Simon. Evidence of behavior is, okay. You mean an assertion as the TE's construction? Let's see.
Oh, gosh, I wrote that one so long ago.
Yeah.
It's in the challenge to its trusted hardware component, producing evidence of behavior.
Right, that's the confusion part, I think.
I think it's the behavior piece, right? You're not looking for evidence of behavior, you're looking for what it is that's inside the TEE. Right.
I was trying, there's some phrase that's used up above, I thought. Trust in the attester, okay. About the this is the phrase I was looking for, about its software state.
Yeah, okay, evidence of software state.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
do we mean data and software, data and code in this context?
Yes. That's software state.
Data, you don't always refer to as software, right? I know it's software from your point of view because it's not hardware, but we don't all think in that dichotomy.
Right. My point is, whatever the phrase is up here, I want it to match down here. So I'm going to say it in one place and I'll copy it. Are you okay with this phrase or software and data state?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, we'll just make it match. Okay. Okay. Does that resolve your comment, Simon? Close enough?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, going on to the next one here, and I'll do some cleanup. I'll go through and accept comments after the call here, but so this one I added from the meeting. After the meeting last time, we had some discussion about this is the freshness stuff, right? So one of the security concerns is you have to make sure that somebody isn't supplying the signed evidence that was from like 3 months ago, and so it's not the one that exists. It's not about the present state, it's about the state before it was revved or something. And so that's where there's this discussion about how you know that it's fresh. And so that's the whole point of the challenge or the nonce. And so this is just saying, you talked about what this used to say nonce, so we genericized it to say challenge, right? And so we didn't say not what the challenge was used for, and so I added the sentence here that says, okay, part of the appraisal or the verification is to verify that it came back with the right challenge, right? So that's what this phrase is right
here. Yes.
Okay, so we've talked about that part. All right, so now let's get into some new text here. So this one is Mike. Go ahead, talk about this one. We made a change to the SIP phrase here.
Trying to understand what's gone on here. So I made a change, okay.
Yeah, so by the way...
Yeah, okay, I hate the word secure, so I was trying to avoid that.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's all I was just trying to do. Provide assurances around specific security properties. That's all I was doing.
Okay, makes sense to me. Yeah, got it. So last time we had a discussion, there was some text down here that last time there was an observation in one of these comments that says, other than anonymity, all these other points here were not specific to direct anonymous attestation, unforgeability and those things. And so we said they should be moved up to the previous section. And so that's what this text was, just taking those same things and moving them up into the just general attestation, not specific to DAA. So this text is not new, it's the text out from down below.
Okay, makes sense.
So this one is the one where Simon had said, I would change the section anonymous and non-anonymous attestation. And the property mentioned here, and which was originally right here, is called anonymity. And so I'm proposing just the topic being anonymity to address Simon's comment. You're okay with that, Simon?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to leave the rest of yours because the rest of your topic here is for the text down below, which is you say, should we add a reference to EPID? And
I think you did, didn't you?
I don't think, no.
Well, you added a reference to an ISO standard around DAA signatures, right?
Somebody else did. Oh, sorry. Somebody else mentioned this, and it's not in the references section right now. My belief is, you can see the difference is this reference here is the 11889-1. This one has multiple parts. -1 is the whole overall architecture, but this one is behind a paywall, so I can't open it up and verify that this stuff is actually in that document.
Well, A, we shouldn't be referencing stuff which sits behind a paywall, and B,
well, also all ISO standards sit behind paywalls.
Yep.
So we shouldn't be referencing it, arguably. The other thing is that, we've got paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of a particular example here. And yep. I get it, but, we've got one paragraph on recoverability.
Yeah.
And that worries me a bit, just in terms of weight and balance. I think it's really good stuff, but yeah.
So I think what you're wondering, I'm gathering, is should all of this section say less and move this into something that can be referenced from this document?
Yes, I think so. That's what I'm asking. I'm not convinced, because I think it is.
Yeah. No, it's good text.
Yeah.
The question is, should we move it to copy graveyard, and meaning move it into some other document and replace it with a 1 to 2 paragraph higher level summary that then references the more detailed document? That's I think the question. Which then, I think, Mike, your point is that gives more balance between level of detail between different topics.
Yes.
Let's see, who originally wrote this? This was Jinjin's section, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
So Jinjin, are you on the call? Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I think we can simplify this section. Maybe use just 1 or 2 paragraphs, and more technical details to
let's not lose it, please.
Right.
I think we've done really good work on this, and it was a good start anyway. But yeah, okay, great.
I mean, one thing we could do in the meantime, just like we talked about moving the global platform definition into the scoping.md document, we could in the meantime put this into a markdown that can be referenced, because we don't have another white paper or something, but then we could at least have something to point to in the actual white paper by October 26th, as long as it gets merged into a markdown in the meantime. Are people okay with that approach?
I'd like to be pointing at stuff we're certain about.
Okay. So, Mike, would you be happier for us to not reference it by October 26th, but just keep the text?
Yeah, and then work up something, because we're coming up with a second white paper, which is fantastic, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe a third, who knows?
I'm just going to add a comment here. So, action item, move into copy graveyard and use 1 to 2 paragraph high level summary staying here. Okay. Because then we don't have to wordsmith any of the text in here, because we're going to have all new text, but shorter, in next meeting. Although I should say all new. It may be a derivative of some of the text that's in here. So. Okay, so then I'm going to skip over the rest of this section. And we've talked about recoverability already. And so I'm looking for any other comments here that we haven't otherwise. We're going to, copy graveyard. And then, are there any other references, I should ask, are there any other references that we should add? Besides, we will have 5, because we'll put scoping into here, but are there any other references besides those 5 that we think would be important for us to reference that are not paywalled?
Do we mention in passing anything like GDPR or CCPA? If so, referencing them would probably be quite nice. But if we don't, let's not tie ourselves in knots just to allow us to do so.
Ooh, there's no reference to GDPR in the document right now.
Okay, fine. I don't propose putting it in specially, just to make me happy.
I think we're also taking an approach where we're not putting vendor references into here, right? Vendor documents would reference this instead of the other way around, or would be welcome to, or whatever. And so are there any other references people know of that would be roughly vendor neutral, not paywalled, and relevant to this white paper? Okay, sounds like we're good. Feel free to add any in comments if you find till next time.
Do we need the reference to global platform now? That effectively got moved out to the scoping document, right?
You might be right. Let's see. Yeah, that one is only referenced from copy graveyard now. You're right. So yeah, that one can be removed now, meaning it will be referenced from scoping.md rather than scoping referenced from here. Yeah, and so let me just add a note to that point so it doesn't get lost here. Where's the plus? Oh, there it is. Okay. Move 3 to scoping.md. Okay, got it. All right, we made it to the end. Anything else on this one? Otherwise, I'm going to go on the agenda.
No, great work. Well done,
Okay.
everyone.
Great, and got a number of action items out of it, so I'm happy with that. So let's go back and ask, do we have quorum now? Stefano?
I do not believe we do. We did not
Okay,
have another
then-
Premier member to join.
Okay, then we will defer the minutes the minutes approval until next meeting. On our pull requests, there's nothing I think we have to discuss in detail, but I do want to highlight our current state here. So if I go to our list of pull requests, we have 2 specific pull requests. Number 62, the time bomb was already clicking, and so I'm just going to call it up because I can't remember the date here. Mike has already approved, and this one, the time bomb expires October 6th, or whenever a third person clicks approval, whichever comes first, because this has been open for since before last meeting. And so if somebody else goes through and marks this and is approved, then it will get merged. Otherwise, I will merge it October 6th unless anybody objects, right? Okay, that's the first one. There's nothing to discuss there, I don't think so. And then the second one was another one that I don't think anybody has marked as approved yet. This was updating the scoping document. And this one I really, really want merged before October 26th, because if we start pointing to it by more people, then we want it to be phrased as future. My belief is there's no meaning changes here, so it should be straightforward to review. Mike did do one pass and pointed out some typos that have been fixed. And so my belief is that it should be easy for people to review, but I do need 2 people to review it. And mark it as, I should say, 2 people to mark it as approved. So we'll keep this one on here as my constant arm twisting until it gets merged, because I would like this one merged before the 26th.
I would recommend people just go to these and have a quick review and then tick approve if they're happy, because it's a great way of looking like you've done something useful, making yourself look good, and making Dave happy. So all useful things.
And Simon and Mike have both been great at doing reviews, so thanks to the 2 of them. I'd love to have other people as well marking things as approved. So, but I do want to recognize gold stars go to Mike and Simon for being very active at approving things. So,
well, I only started doing it because I noticed that Simon was doing it, and I didn't want to feel left out.
Yeah, well, you know, I've let you catch up in the last month or so, so I probably need to. I need to back down on the gas, I guess.
It's a special invitation because you don't have to be all TAC members, including general member TAC representatives, are part of the approval process here. It doesn't have to be the voting members. And so if you're here as a TAC representative, but you don't get a vote, this is a case where you count at least as much as anybody else. And so if 2 non-voting members approve, it still gets merged. So please be useful. You guys are great. So just want to spread the love. All right, and I guess the only thing to highlight on our list of issues to do is we still have this one here, define what a growth plan entails that Simon filed. There's been a little bit of discussion on this one. I'll just highlight the discussion. I don't know if there's anything to discuss here. In the project progression policy, Simon points out that the incubation and graduation stages refer to a growth plan, but doesn't define what's expected in it. We then have a number of comments from Ava. We have me pointing to an open enclave project has a pull request open for its growth plan. If you remember, those of you who are around in Lyon, where Open Enclave, the TAC voted as an incubation project. In order to make it be an incubation project, you had to have a growth plan. And of course, we didn't have any criteria for what our growth plan is, so we kind of made it up during the vote or whatever. And so Mike Brasher, presenting the presentation, actually had a very simple growth plan. And so maybe it can be improved or whatever, but this pull request pulls in the different bullets out of the project progression policy and the simple statements that Mike did that the TAC said were sufficient, lacking any guidelines. And so there's at least something to start from, and maybe we can improve it or whatever, but I just wanted to highlight that, Open Enclave has started on this part. And so we have a precedent. I'm not saying it's a great precedent, but it's better than nothing. And so we should do more work on what we expect it to actually be, so we can have maybe better guidance as more things move into incubation over time. So
makes sense.
So you just want to highlight, since there had been discussion on this.
I'll take a look at that, Dave. It has to be said, I've probably been pretty distracted on my CCC actions in the last month or so. So yep. I'll try and sweep back round.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight this to all you as the Open Enclave mentor, meaning as the TAC designated mentor to Open Enclave. I just wanted to highlight this to the rest of you, since this is something that we, the TAC, need to perhaps do some work on, is to provide more details. So, all right, that's all I wanted to do, was to highlight this topic here. And so, unless there's any other comments, are there any other business to discuss on this call? Going once.
Hey Dave,
Yeah.
Just as a thought, as we're approaching our year, are we looking to sort of like try and set ourselves objectives for the next year?
Yes, and I realized I didn't have a slide on it, and Ava's here, and we did have another topic, and I put it on the email agenda, and I realized it didn't make it into a slide in this deck. So I do have another topic under any other business. So let me first answer yours, then I'm going to come back to the topic that Ava and I wanted to have, and we can have 5 or 10 minutes on that probably. So on your topic, Jethro and I actually, and I see Jethro has dropped off. Jethro and I met earlier this week to kind of talk about that, and I would love to hear other people's thoughts as to say, what is our work plan going to be for the next year? Because we've been spending a lot of our time on, creating our own process, right? Because we didn't have one, right? And so hopefully that's all of a one-time thing, and we'd be into just maintenance mode on that, and we'd be ready to tackle bigger things. And so one of the questions we talked about is, what are the things that we want to focus on? What are the things that we're not doing right now that we want to spend more time on, and so on? And so at the time I gave him, I talked to Jessica about my views, is I think that there were 3 areas, one of which it overlaps with Ava's topic. And so I'm just going to try to take notes on the screen, see if I can remember. So one was the topic of cross-project coordination, which is the one that we're going to talk about momentarily, cross-project coordination. Another one was cross-org coordination. And by cross-org, this is things like, relationship to, IETF, relationship to global platform, FIDO, and as well as government organizations, NIST and BSI, and et cetera. And the third one was the additional terminology stuff that we that's the action item for Mike and Ava. It's just, I think we called this one additional collateral, and then there's white papers or whatever. So those are 3 areas that I see personally as areas, this is not in order of priority or anything, this is just 3 points. Additional collateral, meaning white papers, terminology, whatever, talks at conferences and things like that. So like Lisa and so on. These are the 3 areas that I see us as needing to do more work on, and that is always new stuff. So that's my quick answer to you, is those are the 3 big areas that I see, and I would welcome suggestions from anybody else, because this is what Jethro and I were talking about, as to things that we saw. I think this speaks for him too. He's not on the call, but this is a summary of what we were discussing this week. So So with that, I wanted to go back to this topic here, which I see, Ava, you're still on the call. And so I will summarize and I'll let Ava speak to what happens to other things. And so my quick kickoff is, we've had discussions here about per project communication about, say, Matrix and Rocket and so on. We said each project can use something faster than a mailing list that they can use. So maybe what works for NARCs is Rocket, and what works for Open Enclave is Matrix, and so on. But then last meeting, we announced the attestation list for cross-project coordination about attestation, and we created an email list, okay? And so the observation was, well, what about things faster than an email list? And so with that, I'm gonna hand it to Ava if you have audio to talk about what your thoughts and when you brought this up. So go ahead.
I do have audio, and I'm going to keep coming back to this topic because it's been critical in my experience in building other communities in the past. Having some sort of a chat mechanism where email is very slow and asynchronous. A lot of people are overwhelmed by it, and things get filtered. But having a chat system where we can maintain connection with each other across projects to talk about common challenges or places where we can collaborate. The question just becomes, as I see Dave writing, what system do we use? Slack is a terrible but common denominator. IRC is even more common and my personal favorite, but I'm in the minority there. And then is it going to be Rocket or Matrix or something else? But I would love to get a read on, does everybody agree that it would be a good thing to have this? And if so, then the question is just which one? At which of those layers are we stuck right now?
So here's a question first. What sort of stuff might we want to talk about? I mean, I agree, attestation. So there are some obvious things. I think there's some other questions like how we coordinate. So I think one of the interesting things about the projects we've recently acquired or are in the process of acquiring is that some of them at least sort of sit on top of or could use other projects.
Yes.
So we should be thinking about how we can do that. So one of the things I also thought about is maybe we should set aside maybe half an hour in every TAC meeting or every other TAC meeting for a demo or how could we work together or a deep dive technical discussion on choices and opportunities for the different projects. I would find that immensely useful to hear about other projects. And I suspect that goes for most of the people on the TAC.
Like that sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. That's it, really.
I like that idea. I think that also would really help with cross-project coordination.
Yes.
The chat system helps specifically because I may not have email from most of the folks here, right? There's a couple of folks that I talk with over email across projects, but by and large, I'm not sure how to reach several people from the newer projects. Having a space that is ongoing and virtual where we can have conversations like the ones we have in this meeting, but not waiting 2 weeks and taking up everyone's time necessarily, is crucial for enabling cross-project communication. Can we please create a chat system of some type?
Yeah, I agree. One of the questions one of the criteria we might want to use, is something that can have cross, because quite a lot of things you can have gateways in, right?
Sure.
So something which has multiple gateways in means that people don't have to keep multiple. That's one of the problems that I have with chat is that all the different things I'm involved with have different things. So I either ignore them or would use gateways if applicable. So that.
So do you know? Is there? So just to take the example here, let's for example the attestation channel. That the first attestation meeting was about coordination between NARCs and Open Enclave. But not limited to those two. But the origin of it was between NARCs and Open Enclave. And so if one of them uses Rocket, one of them uses Matrix, does there exist a gateway between Rocket and Matrix?
There exist gateways between Rocket and things like Slack or IRC and Matrix and things like Slack or IRC.
Okay.
but I don't know about between Rocket and Matrix directly.
So I wonder if using either Slack or IRC purely as a gateway mechanism, what if the CCC created a Slack or IOC channel, but then nobody used it directly, everybody used it via a gateway. They used it through whatever their system was. Where, you know, the Rocket people use it through Rocket's
the problem
gateway.
is you tend to lose resolution as you go through these. Things start going horribly.
And you lose a fair bit of functionality that way.
Yeah. So it looks like I'm just doing some quick searching.
I mean, the attestation, the present one on the table, right? And my expectation is we'll probably have more over time, but that's the immediate one because we just created a mailing list. But some would probably say that a mailing list is not sufficient to ensure good communication, right? We need chat of some sort, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. Say, now that we're doing this attestation stuff, there hasn't been much traffic on the list yet because it's just been created and people have just started joining. Should we also right now quickly create a chat channel as well? And if so, what do we do?
So sorry, carry on, Ava.
I just want to come back to, again, it's not about solving this specific issue of attestation discussions. It is a much broader issue that I'm going to keep bringing up because it is crucial to building cross-project communication, knowledge, awareness, and trust.
Yep. I absolutely agree.
Okay.
So I've just put in the chat a MatterBridge, which provides at least some level of gateway between Mattermost, IRC, XMPP, Gitter, Slack, Discord, Telegram, Rocket Chat, HipChat, and Steam, which ain't bad.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have heard of it as well and heard good things generally. So.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I heard whether we actually have agreement on whether we think a gatewayed approach is good or bad, because I heard one pro that says people could use the pro of a gateway approach is people can use the system they're already using and not have to use multiple of them. And the con is
the gateway approach. Yeah, sorry, Dave. The gateway approach still prioritizes a single system and then enables gateways from others.
Okay.
And so I believe we are currently stuck on which system should we make as the core system. Mm-hmm. And can we just take that to the mailing list and have either a discussion or a vote there?
Let's also find out if Linux Foundation has one which we can just use, because if so, that's kind of useful.
So let's assign a couple of specific action items then.
The Linux Foundation, I've already spoken to them about this a couple times in other areas. I can answer that as a proxy for them. Uh-huh. They support whatever the project wants to do and will fund it. That being said, they have many projects which use Slacks at various sizes. And so that's an easy one for them to spin up.
That's useful to know, thanks.
There are efforts internally to try and move to Mattermost, since it's obviously more desirable from an open source standpoint, but those efforts are relatively new.
Hey, Stefano, thanks for letting me answer for you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, anytime anyone wants to do some of my job, they're welcome.
I thought I'd saw you drop.
So what are the next steps then?
I think the next step is, Stefano, if you have more info on the Mattermost or Slack options, could you share those out on the list? And then after that, I think I would propose we vote.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think you covered it pretty well. The Slack is the preferred method today, and Mattermost is more of a, I know Chris Anichek is the one who's kind of heading it up to try and figure out how do we get more projects to use Mattermost. But Slack is just so extremely popular. It's a really heavy lift.
Mattermost, is, and MatterBridge, we've got options there, right? So I would go with that.
I would like to touch on point 2 in the last 2 minutes, 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
Just to share out that I've started, as we began the conversation about common terminology, Mike, I know you and I need to continue on that one. I've also begun talking, because there are other projects happening in the CNCF space. So I'm going to be talking with CNCF SIG Security in a couple of weeks. In 1 week. Gosh, time flies. As several projects in the CNCF are beginning to explore how to use TEs.
Tell them to come to us.
and tell them to come use our projects. But right, those projects already exist in the CNCF, and they want to use the projects that are being produced over here. And I think we should, like, this was part of my, can we create a working group, or how do we establish the cross-foundation coordination for cross-project coordination between these groups?
We should certainly offer to host them and to give a talk, demonstration, all those sorts of things.
Okay,
would be my thinking.
Yeah, so I'm just having a very initial, like, hey, what are you all interested in kind of discussion over there. If anyone wants to join, CNCF 6 security.
In case you don't have enough stuff that we're doing, right?
Right.
That's great, thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we're at the top of the hour. So since there was a moment of silence here, let's go ahead and call it here, and we can continue any of this discussion on the list or next meeting. And let's see if we can do a vote on number 1 prior to next meeting, if we can get the actual proposal in email for us to vote on. And so it sounded like, if I understood right, does Stefano have the action item there, or?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Okay, great. So as soon as you put out the details for us to vote on, then we can start the vote. So
could you add some stuff about sort of demos and, and tech talks as well, please, to that?
Oh yeah, good point. Okay. Okay, love it.
Thanks again, folks. Nice one.
Okay, thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Here's all.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.